Good morning. My name is Patrick Duray. I want to welcome everyone to the Bureau of Automotive Repairs Advisory Group meeting. Today is Thursday, July 21st, 2022, and this is our first in-person meeting of this committee or this group in over 2 years. I know it's been a long journey getting to this point, but I'm very excited for all of us to be able to see each other in the flesh, face-to-face, and be able to have a meaningful dialogue. We've had to actually cancel a couple of meetings over the course of the last 2 years due to some of the challenges in coordinating meetings that we thought might be in person, but then had to move virtually, and it just didn't seem we just didn't have our act together to be able to pull it off. So a couple of meetings actually got canceled, and we didn't have a lot of agenda items. So this has been a long time coming, getting to this point again, and I want to welcome everyone. I hope everyone's doing well and feeling healthy today. Very excited, as I say, to be able to have this opportunity to meet face-to-face. I have a couple things that I want to do just as housekeeping items before we start the meeting. There'll be an introduction of the members, and it'll be a little challenging because this is a hybrid meeting. This is not just an in-person meeting, but a Webex meeting that we've done over the last 2 years when we've met. So we're going to be doing both for the first time ever. I know the department is confident that we can pull this off because they've been doing this for other programs over the last months and years during this pandemic. So appreciate their support of this effort today. Our Webex coordinator is David Bowie, and David, you are not here in person with us, but you are online virtually on the Webex monitoring, and then we are also webcasting the event, and you all heard initially from Mike Sanchez, but I'll introduce him as well. And then our facilitator or coordinator of all meetings, Zach Richardson, a man who needs no introduction, but I will introduce Zach. He is our support staff in the front office at the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and will be helping us with today's meeting. A couple of introductions. First off, where's Bill? Bill Thomas. Bill Thomas is our new Deputy Chief for Field Operations and Enforcement. Bill was appointed on April 18th of this year after a very exhausting search to fill that position. It was vacated 4 years ago? Yeah. And we had a few attempts to try and fill that position, a few recruitments, as they say, in state service. And Bill was appointed and stuck through the numerous recruitments, and I appointed him on April 18th of this year. So welcome, Bill Thomas. He joins in the front office our other two deputies, Linda Jansen. Jansen is right there. Linda, good to see you. Linda oversees the Consumer Assistance Program, licensing, our program support unit, all things admin, I want to say, which is the personnel office, contracts, and does all of her unit, or one of her functions is to monitor and track all of the reporting for COVID. A lot of weekly, daily reporting that goes on with respect to the pandemic, and so her office is in charge of that. And then Clay Leak. Clay oversees, the division's too hard to tell you in person, but it's Technology Services Branch and the Smog Check Program. And the Technology Services Branch works very closely on the support for the Smog Check contract, the VID, as we call it, Vehicle Identification or Information Identification Database. Yeah. Okay, that does it for our internal introductions. I want to also announce that we have a workshop planned following today's meeting. Bill Thomas will be chairing that and facilitating it. A presentation from Matt Gibson, who is with our executive office on a limited term basis to support us in implementation of the bill, the major reform legislation that was chaptered or signed into law by the governor last year, AB 471. It's a bill that was introduced by Assemblymember Lowe, who was the former chair of the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, and the bill has a number of reforms in it, but the topic at hand that we'll be talking about at the workshop today is the establishment of a vehicle safety inspection program. And we had a workshop in April. I was going to say following our last bar advisory group meeting, but we canceled that meeting, so it just was a workshop on its own. We didn't have any draft regulations or anything to talk from or discuss, but we did share some ideas about what we thought the program might look like conceptually, and did get some and welcomed the feedback that we got from that workshop and a survey that we did conducted earlier this year. We have now put pen to paper or fingers to the keyboard and drafted some regulations which are not significant in terms of the amount of text in the regulations themselves, but they do have, that accompanies those regulations, a fairly comprehensive manual, an instruction manual on how to perform a vehicle safety inspection, the kinds of systems or components of the vehicle that we would be expecting to have this test performed. And again, I might remind everyone, this is unlike Smog Check that puts vehicles on a regular cycle for inspections and every 2 years, and then also requires an inspection upon change of ownership. This is only limited to this inspection, this vehicle safety inspection, to vehicles that are deemed a total loss. The insurance company has deemed it a total loss. It's been kind of put to the side, and then someone has bought that vehicle at auction or wants to resurrect the title of that vehicle. And the inspection of those vehicles currently require a lamp, brake, and smog check. And what this legislation asks us to do is to look at, in addition to the lamp and brake, and merging those two programs into one program, adding other components. And so we'll be talking about that and getting feedback on the actual draft regulations and the inspection manual later today. Oh, sorry, I've got my talking points on my phone here. I also want to announce, I'm not sure if those were aware, we kind of, with the pandemic, some things just kind of pass, and you forget that some major milestones passed before your very eyes, and one of them almost did. A couple months had passed, and everyone, realizing that it was 2022, and someone said, "Isn't that the Bureau's 50th? We've been around 50 years." And I said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, we've got to say something about that." So I'm saying something now, but we have been engaged in a public awareness campaign just to kind of celebrate the fact that the Bureau of Automotive Repair is celebrating its 50th anniversary, our first 50th birthday this year. So we have kind of a low-budget outreach campaign on it. It's mostly social media. There's been, I won't say what would I call it, a video, I guess, I shot with the help of Mr. Sanchez over there. How many takes did I have to do on that? I don't know. Someone reminded me of that I was a little stiff on that commercial or ad, but I don't pretend to be an actor, so and I'm not going to be looking to get my Screen Actors Guild card anytime soon. But it was an effort to at least announce the fact that we've got a 50-year history protecting California consumers, and I'm very proud of that. I want to thank the many men and women over the 50 years that have worked for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. I feel very honored to have played a small role in working with the Bureau and supporting and helping to protect California consumers. I also want to thank the many men and women in the industry who have, during this time, who repair our cars every day, millions of cars every year, and without them, we would be stranded on the roads. We still are in many cases because people neglect the needed repairs to their vehicles, and sometimes things just happen, obviously, to vehicles unexpectedly. But thank the many outstanding people in this industry that help our economy and help fix our cars every day. That is it for my opening remarks. I want to now introduce, and I'll have them do so, unlike the virtual meetings that we did in the past where I did all the introductions, I'd like to have each of them introduce themselves. We'll start to my far right here. We'll do the introductions in the room first, and then I'll turn it over to the virtual attendees of the Bar Advisory Group, and I think I'll be able to identify who those are. Let's start here on the far right.
My name is Les Swizer. I am staff counsel at California New Car Dealers Association.
Yes, and you may remember that the New Car Dealers Association, Brian Moss is our regular appointee to the group. He's had a couple of alternates who have stood in for him over the years. Most recently, it was Anthony Bento, and now Les has taken over that role, so welcome, Les.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Webb, and I'm representing the Automotive Oil Change Association.
And Matthew is our newest appointee. The Oil Change Association has been a member of this advisory group for a couple of years now, certainly pre-pandemic, so maybe 3 years or more. And you're taking the place of Christina Botters, and that was a recent announcement. And I think Christine is still recognized on the advisory group agenda for today's meeting, but I wanted to point out that Matthew, that appointment came right after we had released or posted the notice for the meeting. But welcome to our,
Thank you.
To our group.
Hi, Jack Molodanoff, representing the California Auto Body Association. Good morning, all. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dave Kusa, representing Automotive Service Council of California.
Good morning. Johan Gallo, representing CalABC.
Nikki Ayers, representing the IAPA.
Jeff Cox, representing the Automotive Maintenance and Repair Association.
All right. Does not look like I missed anyone in the room here. How about let's go to the virtual introductions. I'll call you out. If you could introduce yourselves through the Webex. Gary Conover.
Good morning, Gary Conover, representing the California Automotive Wholesalers Association. I apologize for not being in person today.
Not a problem. Welcome, Gary. Andrew McGee. Okay, Andrew's Andrew's with the California Automotive Teachers. I think he was transitioning as a new appointee for George Ritz. Yes, George Ritz retired, I think at the beginning of this year, and so the handoff has occurred, but not until I guess Andrew is able to attend his first meeting. Maybe he'll join us a little bit later on. Tim Chang. Tim Chang is an alternate standing in for Megan McKernan with the Automobile Club of Southern California. Megan is on out of town. I think she's on vacation this week. Tim said he would be joining us virtually, but maybe a little bit later. Is he? Tim?
Yeah, Pat,
Oh,
yeah, sorry,
there you go.
I had a little trouble finding the unmute button. Yes, Tim Chang,
Gotcha.
Auto Club of Southern California. Thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome, Tim. David Robinette.
Yes, Dave Robinette, representing the Inter-Industry Conference on Auto Collision Repair, or ICAR. I am a recent COVID survivor, but not far enough in the past that I could be there in person, so I apologize about that. Grateful to be here.
Nice to have you joining us. And Saren Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Saren Taylor, on behalf of the Personal Insurance Federation of California, a trade association representing many large insurers that serve the majority of Californians in both home and auto, earthquake, flood. New to the advisory group and really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thank you.
I can't remember if this is your first or second meeting. Did we have a meeting already virtually that you attended?
It's certainly the first one that I've been to. I might
Okay.
be the second one since I joined the group, but I think the first one was like immediately upon me joining, and I missed it. So
Yeah, that's so this is the first one. It sounds like for PIF. PIF is kind of the newest association or group to join us. It's directly related to some of the communications and talks we've been having for the most of this year, of all of this year, and some part of last year, directly related to some of the legislation that's been introduced relating to our two industries, insurance and auto repair, when it comes to a collision repair in particular. And we have a presentation actually on some on a topic that has gotten us all interested relating to storage fees. And so welcome, Saren and PIF, or Personal Insurance Federation of California.
thank you very much.
I think that's it for members. Did I miss anyone virtually in particular? I don't think Vince Gregory was planning to attend, although I also understand he's retired and an alternate by the name of Jason Mangles has been named. Was already serving, but I'm not sure if he is attending. And then Lou Anapolsky, I do not believe is attending today's meeting. He was going to do his best to attend virtually, but we haven't heard from him yet. All right. If that is all of the introductions for our Bar Advisory Group meeting, let's proceed with the agenda. Dca News and Updates, Jennifer Simoes, our Deputy Director for the Legislative Division. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. So as Pat said, I'm Jennifer Simoes. I'm the Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs, but I'm filling in for Board and Bureau Relations today. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide the update today. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the Open Meeting Act legislation that recently passed. So the governor recently signed SB 189 on June 30th, which reinstates through July 1st, 2023, the remote meeting provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. So it basically puts into place what was allowed under the waiver, and it gives another year for the legislature to kind of work out how they want meetings to continue in the future. We want to thank all the boards and bureaus for putting in those letters of support for continuing to allow virtual meetings, and we are still asking boards to track the cost for meetings, even those where there isn't travel, and also use Webex as much as possible to allow the public to attend remotely, especially as COVID-19 numbers continue to rise. In addition, if there's situations in actual in-person meetings where you can't meet due to quorum issues, we are asking that you actually let me know about those so I can use those as examples for next year when legislation goes through. Regarding in-person meeting guidelines and COVID-19 safety measures, the legislation's passed allowing remote meetings. We are reminding boards that choose to hold in-person meetings of the safety measures, best practices, and recommendations for holding public meetings. When planning for upcoming meetings, please remember all board and bureau members and staff are expected to follow the state and local public health guidelines that apply in the area where meetings are held. Face coverings are strongly recommended for all board members and staff at meetings. The California Department of Public Health strongly recommends that individuals continue to mask in indoor settings. Please post face covering guidance signage at your meeting check-in or entrance. And vaccination and testing. Prior to meeting in person or at a remote location, members need to submit vaccination verification at DCA's Office of Human Resources or be subject to COVID-19 testing. So moving on to the Enlightened licensing project. We are pleased to announce the inaugural report of the Enlightened licensing project is now available and was distributed to all boards and bureaus on Friday, May 13th. This innovative and collaborative project was started to streamline and enhance licensing processes by utilizing the knowledge and expertise of subject matter experts within DCA boards and bureaus. The project was conducted in partnership with the Board of Registered Nursing. After a thorough assessment of some of BRN's licensing processes, the project's co-chairs provided recommendations to introduce new ideas and implement best practices for critical activities. DCA held a brown bag event on June 1st to review the recommendations with all boards and bureaus, as we hope other boards and bureaus can learn from this report and implement recommendations where applicable. We believe it is so important to learn from each other and share our knowledge. We will be turning to enforcement next, and we'll be reviewing the enforcement process at board meetings at a board through this Enlightened process. And the Enlightened process is just basically a peer review of other boards and kind of look at that board, that board that they're reviewing and seeing how they can make things and processes more streamlined and effective. Okay, so next item is regulations. DCA also recently held a brown bag meeting with executive officers and bureau chiefs on July 5th to roll out changes to DCA's regulation development and approval process. These changes were also discussed and approved by DCA's executive officer and bureau chief cabinet. DCA shared documentation on the process and changes with all the boards and bureaus. Next, a little bit about new DCA staff. DCA is pleased to announce that Nicole Lay was hired on June 24th as the Deputy Director of DCA's Office of Administrative Services. With more than 20 years of state service experience, Nicole has dedicated 10 of those years to DCA. Most recently, she served as Acting Deputy Director of OAS, where she was responsible for overseeing the business functions of the Office of Human Resources, Fiscal Operations, and Business Services. Prior to this role, Nicole was Chief of the DCA Office of Human Resources. She also previously served at the Contractor State License Board and the Department of Motor Vehicles. We are very excited to have her as part of DCA's executive leadership team. And this next one leads to why I'm here. Board and Bureau Relations departures. It's with great sadness that we announce some transitions within our Board and Bureau Relations unit. Carrie Holmes, who would usually be sitting here in my place, was Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, and she left DCA on May 13th. Additionally, Brianna Miller has accepted another position and left DCA on June 10th. DCA appreciates the support and service Brianna and Carrie have provided to our boards and bureaus. They have both been a huge asset to the department. We'd like to assure you that during this transitional period, DCA Executive Office and Board and Bureau Relations will continue to ensure continuity of services to all DCA boards and bureaus. If you need anything, please contact the DCA Member Relations email or call the DCA Executive Office directly. Okay, a little bit about travel expense claims. The department was recently advised by the State Controller's Office that there will be a delay in the processing and approval of travel expense claims until the end of July due to setting up the new fiscal year budget and fiscal. We appreciate your patience, and claims will be processed as quickly as they can once we are able to use the system again. Next item is related to a board leadership quarterly meeting, which will be held on July 26th. These quarterly meetings are attended by board presidents and vice presidents, executive officers, and DCA leaders, and provide the opportunity to discuss important emerging issues as a group. The next item is final 2022 board member orientation training. And lastly, board members are required to complete, we call it BMOT, within 1 year of their appointment and reappointment. The final training of 2022 will be offered on October 12th, and members can register through DCA's learning management system. BMOT is required for newly appointed and reappointed members, but is available as a refresher for all members and executive officers. Reach out to Board and Bureau Relations with any questions. And as I close this long update, as always, DCA is here to help, and if there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the update and news from DCA, or Department of Consumer Affairs, our umbrella department or agency. Any questions, comments from advisory group members? Anyone virtually, either an advisory group member or the member of the public? Okay. Any comments from the public here attending in person? Okay, I guess You're off the hook.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, our next presentation, we have two that'll be virtually, and this is one of them. All others will be in person. Holly O'Connor is with our Bar Executive Office and is our Legislative and Regulations Coordinator, working with Jennifer's unit and our contacts in her office at the department. And Holly is joining us through the Webex connection. Welcome, Holly. You'll be advancing your own slides, as I understand it, as the remote presenters both will be doing. Holly?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
A little faint.
Let's see.
Try again.
This is the moderator. We lost video on Holly. Give us just a moment, please.
Okay, she might have to join us a little later, so Clay, are you ready to jump forward as the next presentation? We'll come back to Holly when she joins us. All right, let's skip ahead in the agenda.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Yeah, Holly, are you there? Sorry.
Yes. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. That's louder.
Okay, great.
And you've got your, yeah,
okay.
There you are, video and audio working. Great.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
I was just about to jump ahead in the agenda, but we'll continue with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. All right. Am I still the presenter? It doesn't look like I can advance the slides.
This is the moderator. Zach has control of the slides at the moment.
Okay. Well, anyway, sorry, everyone. I'm Holly, the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist here at BAR, and today I'll be providing a legislation update as well as an update on our pending regulatory packages. If we can go to the next slide.
I'm sorry, I had it backwards. Zach has the control of the presentations that are remote. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So the next slide, please, Zach. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, these are some notable dates. Summer recess ends on August 1st. August 12th, last day for fiscal committees to meet and report bills to the floor. August 25th is the last day to amend bills on the floor. And August 31st is the last day for each house to pass bills, and September 30th is the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills. Before beginning, I want to quickly say that although every effort is made to ensure that information provided on these slides is the most current, given the nature of the legislative process, hearing dates or bill summaries shown here may not reflect the latest updates. And for the most current information, you can go to www.leginfo.legislator.ca.gov. Next couple pages show the bills that I've been tracking, and I will go over each of them. Starting with AB 646 on the next couple of pages. Slide 6. Okay, perfect. This would require DCA boards and bureaus posting information on their online license search system about a license revocation that's due to a criminal conviction, to update or remove information about the revoked license should it receive an expungement order related to that conviction. This authorizes BAR to charge a $25 fee unless there are no costs for updating the license information. The next one, thank you, is AB 1733, which would specify that a meeting held under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act includes a meeting held entirely by a teleconference, so long as the state body adheres to certain specified requirements, such as ensuring the public has access to the meeting, there's at least one physical location where the public may participate in the meeting, the meeting agenda is posted online, and if remote participation fails, the meeting must adjourn. The next bill that I'm tracking is AB 2350, which would require the Air Resources Board to establish a zero-emission aftermarket conversion project by allocating up to $2 million annually from the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project to provide an applicant with a rebate for an eligible vehicle which is converted into a zero-emission vehicle. The rebate will be limited to $2,000, and the Air Resources Board must establish the guidelines for the program and eligibility criteria for that rebate. AB 2496 would require a court to require a certificate of compliance for violation of existing law that mandates every motor vehicle must have an adequate muffler, and it prohibits the modification of a motor vehicle exhaust system in a manner that amplifies or increases the noise beyond existing limits. This would become operative on January 1st, 2027, and would require the DMV to place a hold on vehicle registration until that certificate of compliance is received. So the next 5 bills that I'm going to discuss related to catalytic converters. The first one is AB 1740, which deals with core recycler record keeping requirements. The next one is AB 2407, which also deals with core recyclers. This one is their reporting requirements. AB 2682 deals with VIN marking requirements. And as included as part of a smog check, the station must inspect the exterior of the catalytic converter and notify the customer of whether or not it is permanently marked with the VIN number or not. SB 968 outlines core recycler payment and VIN requirements for vehicle sales. And SB 1087 would prohibit any person or core recycler from purchasing a catalytic converter from anybody other than certain specified sellers. That's it for the bills that I'm tracking. Does anyone have questions related to any of those bills?
Thank you, Holly. Let's go around the room here with the advisory group members first. Here, Jack Molodonov.
Hi, Holly. Thank you for the presentation. I have questions on it's AB 2682, and it's page 17 of your presentation. So that particular catalytic converter theft bill does several things. The two on page 17, okay. So there are two things that will impact directly the automotive repair facilities out there. So the first thing it does is require that the shop, when they're repairing or installing and replacing a catalytic converter, to ensure that it's permanently marked with the VIN number. So the question then becomes, does the BAR have any guidelines, or is thinking about maybe doing regulations here to really provide some clarity to the industry as to, for example, what type of equipment you may need to permanently identify or at least mark the VIN number, or the size, the type, how large are the numbers, or would they have to do all the catalytic converters? My understanding, and I'm not a technician, but I understand that some of these vehicles have 4 catalytic converters. So, I mean, is that anytime they're replacing the catalytic converter, they do have to mark, but are you going to, are there going to be any additional requirements, and have you guys considered regulations?
I'll jump in here and try to answer. Well, at this time, we hadn't thought about regulations. I think it's still early in the process, but just the very fact that you're raising some questions about the uncertainty of what that might entail for automotive repair dealers, this responsibility under this legislation, suggests to me that regulations are going to be in order. So I would now having heard your question, I would say most likely so.
So the second part of the, the requirement of that bill says that the Smog station will have to perform a visual inspection. And that was, I was sort of alluding to it earlier, but again, not a tech, but when they do this visual inspection, I know they're not supposed to disassemble anything on the vehicle, but as I mentioned earlier, some of these vehicles have 4 catalytic converters, and so will they have to inspect all 4? And I mean, again, the guidelines. I mean, what is expected? When you do a visual inspection, it's so subjective, and there's going to have to be some clarity, I think. I mean, for some guidelines for the automotive repair shop, so they don't get in trouble, but they don't miss something, or they end up getting potentially, as we know, down the line a citation or fine on something. So I think this particular bill, whether it passes or not, I know it's in the Appropriations Committee. It may not get out. It may, but I think this is a significant one that needs a lot more sort of discussion and maybe internally and maybe some amendments. But in any event, I think this is one that the BR should look very closely at.
Definitely on the smog check portion, obviously a visual inspection is a major component of the overall smog check inspection, and detailing that requirement a little more clearly as a result of this legislation, should it be chaptered, signed into law, is probably going to be necessary as it relates to our smog check inspection manual, which is incorporated by reference in regulations. So I think most certainly so on that second provision, and the first one as well, it sounds like.
Thank you.
Johan Gallo.
Good morning, Johan Gallo, Cal ABC. Following up on Jack's comments with reference to VIN markings on the catalytic converters, we have several concerns. I know there's a lot of emphasis to identify the catalytic converters on the vehicles with a VIN number. Working with members of law enforcement, one of the things they're already seeing is when these victims have their catalytic converters engraved and stolen, thieves are already figured out to keep a grinder in the car and grind the number off so you don't get caught. And so I'm very concerned that we're putting a lot of emphasis on the engraving of the VIN number on the catalytic converter when the thieves are already figuring out that you better have a grinder and get that number off of there, even though it would be a crime to remove it under this bill. The other factor that we discussed in our board meeting yesterday was when we think about smog check shops, not all smog check shops have bays that they can lift the vehicle or a pit that they can work in to get underneath that vehicle to do the thorough inspection of, in some cases, as Jack mentioned, 4 catalytic converters. And so there's a lot of things in these bills that do concern us. Don't get me wrong. This issue on catalytic converter theft has to be addressed. And I think we have to be smart in how we do it, how we proceed to do it, and how we safeguard it. I know there's been a lot of articles the BAR has published. Chief DeRay and I have had numerous conversations about this issue, and I was glad to see the postings on the devices that consumers can buy, that they can protect their catalytic converter and put guards on them. And so I think those all need to be factored into how do we proceed from here and be smarter and not work too hard on something that a criminal can easily eliminate by grinding off the VIN numbers and such. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Jeff Cox.
Thank you. Jeff Cox, Automotive Maintenance Repair Association. I also agree with John's comments about the grinder, but if we are to mark the catalytic converter, I would also suggest that we standardize the location on where we mark it, because catalytic converters have shields on them, so if you mark the shield, that could be easily removed, so maybe a designated place could help in that as well.
Thank you. Nikki Ayers.
Yeah, Nikki Ayers with the IAPA. There could also be a concern of using a grinder to put the VIN number in and breaking the galvanization seal, and that would be, what do I want to use?
Well, you destroy the surface of the item and subject it to rust, because now you've taken all the galvanization off of it, and so you have greater risk of rust.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Understood. We'd get there.
That's called an assist in basketball parlance.
There we go.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, Dave Kusa.
Dave Kusa, Automotive Service Council of California. So building on what Jack was saying, multiple catalytic converters, but some catalytic converters, many vehicles have the catalytic converter that is incorporated into the exhaust manifold of the vehicle, which don't get stolen because they take too long to get stolen, but they often get replaced because they need to be replaced because they wear out. So if we're marking those, usually they're not visible because there's multiple heat shields under the hood, so that will be a concern if this law goes through on part of the regulation, because thus far we've had conversations with the authors, I know Jack has, and they have not, isolated where the catalytic converter lives in the vehicle, whether it's under the vehicle or under the hood. So, and then what Johan said about the shields, right? We will have to consider marking that catalytic converter, and then a shield is installed that makes it hard to see the catalytic converter. So maybe it is marked, and then the smog tech can't see it if there's not a lift in the shop, right? Because we don't have to actually get them off the ground. So those areas will have to be probably addressed as well. And I think, this bill is probably going to pass, right? I think, yeah. Okay, I don't know. Thanks.
Thank you for all those comments. Advisory group members in attendance virtually through the Webex. Any hands raised or any comments from the advisory group members who are not here in person? Okay.
This is the
any
moderator at the
comments
moment there.
from, excuse me?
I was trying to assure you that no one has raised their hand via
Okay,
Webex.
thank you, David. Is that David Bowie?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, David. How about members of the public, both here in person? Yes, Bud Rice.
Good morning, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up Shops. I also agree with the shielding issue, especially if the shields can be swapped, the catalytic converters can be swapped. You got more moving parts here, and you got to make sure that whatever you're authorizing or approving or taking responsibility for, it's more of a locked system. So I know when I say it's okay when it gets out of my shop. Second thing is, and I know you probably do not have this information, but my concern is that you may be looking under the wrong rock anyway. In other words, these catalytic converters are being stolen. And I was going to bring a newspaper article from my own city, Pleasanton, California, and you see the police report, oh, this happened, there was an assault, and then there's a long list of all these catalytic converters that have been stolen from houses. The discussion here is that all those catalytic converters are being stolen, placed in some pickup trucks that are driving around gathering these things, and they're ending up in some kind of a mass distribution center that somehow is ending up in our repair shops, okay? I'm not sure about that, okay? I'm just not sure about that, or if these things are being gathered and being stripped down for the material that's inside of a catalytic converter and never gets to our shops. And so we're doing all this chasing around for catalytic converters that aren't going to get into your shop anyway because they're getting melted down for other reasons. So, and again, I don't know that you have any information on that, but in my mind, I've always thought that, are they all ending up in our shops? All these catalytic converters are ending up in some massive distribution system, and then shops are going, well, that's a new one. Let me have this weird one. I want that weird one I want to put on my customer's car. I just have questions about that. That's all. Thank you.
I do have one more comment.
Thank you, Bud. Looks like Mr. Gallo has a follow-up.
Yeah, just to follow up on the comments that Bud Rice made. One of the things that we've spent a lot of time with our board and our members, and also with Jack Maladonoff, who works with us on the bills that we're tracking and working, is the fact that we're getting this thing backwards. And the fact that we're going after everything we can do to engrave these things, and I see very little effort in any of these bills to deal with the criminal aspect of what's happening. And to Bud Rice's point, and to make it quick, you have all these catalytic converters that are being stolen for the metals, and all of the reason they're being stolen is because of the metals and all of the value that they have. And so I think we need to start looking at legislation that focuses on the criminals, because the people that are stealing it are just the purveyor of the items. They get sold to a middleman who then sells them to the person that ultimately wants all the hybrid metals that are in it and the value that those metals have. And I think we need to start looking at the criminal aspect of it and go after that. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Other comments from members of the public? Anyone virtually on Webex?
This is the moderator. Yes, Chief Doré. We have a request for comment. Lan Win asks, or says, I am Smog Tech myself. How about the idea of adding like a carb label to this do after the aftermarket part with carb? And bear with me, Mr. Wynn. I'm going to give you a chance to speak for yourself. All right, I've sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, this is Lon Nguyen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, so I'm a Smog Tech myself. You know how aftermarket parts have carb label. Just an idea, you know, you could add a label to a Catalytic converter. I don't know if that'll help or not.
Something we'll have to talk to the California Resources Board about. Thank you for the comment.
No worries.
Other comments through Webex?
No additional requests for comment via Webex.
All right. Any other comments before we move on to our second half of this presentation involving the regulations that we're working on and ones that we recently had adopted? All right. We'll continue, Holly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you everyone for your comments. Onto the regulations. This first slide lists the 3 regulation packages that were adopted this year, and also starts our pending regulation packages, which is continued on the next slide. Slide 23. So the Smog Check Repair Assistance Package, our CAP package, that became effective on January 20th of this year. Slide 25 is our Laws and Regulations Training Package, which became effective on April 1st. And the STAR package on slide 26 just became effective on July 1st. The next packages I will go over are pending regulation packages, starting with the Smog Check Equipment Security and Fraud Prevention Package, also known as our Biometrics Package. This will require the use of biometric and web camera devices when performing a smog check. It requires that smog check stations allow bar access whenever inspections are being performed, even if the inspection is occurring outside of normal business hours. And it requires that smog check inspectors allow bar staff remote access to the inspection process via the internet when prompted by the bar OIS software. This package we withdrew from OAL based on their comments in February, and we recently, on July 8th, just resubmitted to OAL. So we're waiting to hear from them on that. The next one is the DAD specification update package, which replaces the current OBD DAD specification with a more comprehensive and updated version to provide additional tools to combat smog check fraud. And it allows the DAD to communicate with new vehicles that use a communication protocol not supported by the current generation of DADs. We are currently working with DCA Legal to prepare this package for formal review. The next three packages I'm going to discuss are mandated by the passage of AB 471 from last year. And we are currently working with DCA Legal to prepare these three packages for formal review. The first one is the Citation and Remedial Training Program for ARDs, which expands BAR's citation program to cover ARD violations of the Automotive Repair Act by establishing a fee structure for citations and clarifying regulatory language under existing sections. It specifies the process for an ARD to contest a citation and request its review by a 3-member panel, and it establishes an application process to obtain a provider certification for BAR laws and regulations training and establish grounds for revocation of that certification. It also creates remedial training course content and course approval process. The next one is the ARD registration application requirements. The purpose of this package is to define nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certifications. It establishes a process for bureau review and approval of educational certifications that do not meet this definition. It establishes a process for recognizing educational certifications on the ARD application. And the fourth item, it requires ARD applicants to provide an email address. The last one under this is the Vehicle Safety Inspection Program, which incorporates a vehicle safety inspection manual. It creates license requirements for vehicle safety stations and technicians, and it sunsets the lamp and brake inspection programs 6 months after the adoption of these regulations. This afternoon at 1 o'clock, there is a workshop on this package. And that is it for our regulatory packages. Does anyone have any questions about these packages?
I'll just jump in. Thank you very much, Holly, for the presentation. And I think you said it, but I'll reiterate the last three regulation packages are all, it doesn't say it on the presentation, but they are all as a result of the reform legislation that was signed into law that I mentioned at the outset of this meeting, AB 471. And as she has noted, Holly, that we will hold a workshop on the last one, the Vehicle Safety Inspection Program, later today. You mentioned OAL. I just want to, we talk a lot in acronyms. That's the Office of Administrative Law. That's the gatekeeper, the state agency responsible for all things, all regulations for all state agencies. So they all must go through and be filed with the Office of Administrative Law and be subject to government code requirements with respect to public comment periods and a very rigorous process for justifying those regulations, which we do each and every time. One of the things it doesn't include is holding workshops, but we found that getting input from all of you as stakeholders on the front end is a lot better than finding out that we have some surprises or something that we've proceeded on without getting kind of a checkoff from our stakeholders. So workshops are a very essential part of the regulatory adoption process. So that's why we are holding one today and why we almost, with every Bar Advisory Group meeting, try to attach some kind of regulation type workshops to give you an opportunity to provide feedback and give some input on our development of those regulations. Comments from the Bar Advisory Group members on the regulations portion of the presentation. Nikki Ayers.
Sorry to have to, maybe I've missed it, but are these new registration application requirements new?
No.
I just don't remember.
No, they're not. We're actually trying to build a process for having all of the requirements in in regulation so that people know what is expected when they fill out an application. Most of these applications are incorporated by reference in a regulation, so it'll say, to become a registered automotive repair dealer in the state of California, see form whatever, and there'll be a number attached to it. Problem with that is that form can change, or it needs to change and be updated. Let's say to update it with the current governor, or an address change, or something like that. And so one of the things that we've always struggled with is every little change that we want to make to the regulation, to the form itself, has to go through a very comprehensive regulation process. If you merely state that it's going to list in regulation things like the current governor, the current address of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, those kinds of things are very much easier to update, and you don't have to go back to the regulatory process to do so. I would say we are adding some things to it as a result of some recently chaptered legislation. I don't have the list in front of me, but there is a process for expediting applications for military spouses and also other military families and other conditions. Let's see, asylees and refugees also we are supposed to, as a requirement of legislation, be capturing that information and looking to expedite those licenses. We also have, as a result of AB 471, a requirement to capture educational certifications. So that was a need to update this or put this regulation package forward. So we'll be looking to do that with all of our applications, whether it be a smog check station. We'll be looking to put all of the requirements of an application in regulation rather than subject it to a form that, quite honestly, I don't feel is as secure. I mean, over my many years in state service, I've seen forms change without getting the public process, and that's not appropriate. We need to make sure that we involve those on any changes, even as insignificant as they might seem to us as internal parties to this process. I think we all want to make sure that everybody knows and what is expected to be completed on an application.
So if they don't have the proper education, they'll be denied that?
No, it's a voluntary submittal.
Okay.
Yeah, no. And I think then there's an expectation with that legislation, at least when we were speaking with Assemblymember Lowe at the time, that he was aware of our auto shop locator on our website, and that somehow we'd be able to capture those educational certifications and represent them on the auto shop locator. Consumers looking for shops might be very motivated and interested to go to shops that have invested in training of their employees and even their ownership potentially. So we're looking at how to do that. That's outside of the regulatory process. That's kind of the administrative aspects of where we want to take this, but it's at least capturing it. The first place to capture it is on the application itself. Eventually, and you'll hear a presentation, I believe, later today. Do we have something? Yes, the Enforcement Licensing Modernization update. Potentially, you would be filling out your application online, not through a piece of paper and submitting it in the mail, but filling it out online and submitting it with those educational certifications represented, and then updated as necessary through a portal that we've established. I think that's kind of our vision with this modernized new digital age we're living in, and that we're looking to create for our licensing and our enforcement programs.
Okay.
And you'll hear a little bit more about that with Clay in a couple of agenda items coming up. Thank you for the question. What else do we have? Anyone else? How about Bar Advisory Group members attending via Webex? No comments, Mr. Bowie?
Nobody from the advisory group is asking to comment at the moment.
Okay, now we'll reach out to members of the public, both here in the room as well as via Webex. No one here in the room has raised their hand. How about on the Webex?
We are once again taking public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, we would. Thank you. All right, Holly, thank you very much for an excellent presentation, and enjoy your upcoming vacation.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is on storage fee referrals. I made a reference to this at the beginning of the meeting when I introduced, when he introduced himself, Saren Taylor, one of our newest members to the advisory groups, and we'll talk about a program that we established in response to some questions and comments and concerns we were receiving at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And here joining us today is the manager of that program, among other things, Chad Melanson. Am I saying it correctly, Chad? Yeah, Melanson. And Bill Thomas, our Deputy Chief for Field Operations and Enforcement. Chad is with our Enforcement Operations branch, which is the program that Bill ran prior to his promotion to the Deputy Chief position, but still oversees it, just not as directly as you previously did. Anyway, welcome both.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Chad Melanson. I'm the supervisor over the centralized complaints unit in the Enforcement Operations branch, and have been asked to kind of look into these storage fee referrals that have been a hot topic lately. So we'll go to the first slide. Since the passage of AB 2392, the Santiago Chapter 434 statutes of 2018, BAR's been providing guidance to the auto body collision industry on storage fees. Prior to my involvement with this, back in October of 2018, BAG had a presentation on storage and towing fees and lien sales. In spring 2019, there was a newsletter that was published on the storage fees and the lien sales. And then October 21st, there was a public workshop on proposed storage fees and regulations. PIFC work group presentation was held in January and May of 2022, and APCIA, along with PIFC, there was a discussion in March of 2022. Next slide. So in response to these storage referrals, or in questions with the storage issues, we've been starting in January of 2022, BAR created a dedicated email to respond to vehicle storage and fee issues that the insurance companies are concerned with. When an insurance company is being charged storage and other fees that they don't feel are appropriate, they can submit a referral for review to the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and that email address is listed there as ardsstoragereferrals@dca.ca.gov. Next slide. So my unit, BAR Centralized Complaints Unit, reviews the referrals as they come in and any documents that are provided to determine the status of the vehicle. The more documents that can be provided to us initially is better. One of the things that we're looking for is the vehicle still at the ARD, okay? Or has the vehicle been picked up? What fees were charged? We're seeing quite a bit of various different fees and labeled differently. Were there funds deducted from the consumer's claim? That's one of the questions that I always ask. And the Centralized Complaints Unit, if we don't get enough documentation from the insurance company up front, we may request the repair file from the insurance company. Next slide. So once we get this information, after an initial review of any documents and information that's sent over to us, We contact the repair facility to review and discuss the fees. We look at all the fees, determine the appropriateness of the storage charges. In some cases, you know, maybe they shouldn't have been charged. Provide information relating to various laws and regulations. And we make a recommendation to the repair facilities and also to the insurance adjusters and industry what we see. So as a result of looking into these storage referrals, we've looked at over 30 referrals to date, and that number continues to grow. We had 8 pending review or response, 16 ARD storage fees reduced or eliminated, depending on the situation. One case, we had $12,000 in storage fees reduced. Vehicles left at ARDs 60 days or longer, that number came down to $1,200. So we were able to adjust that. One other situation, $19,000 was reduced to $9,000. We had a really egregious one where there was $49,500 being charged, and we were able to reduce that to $2,500. And another situation where $22,000 was reduced to $4,115. So that was a pretty good result. Next slide. Continuing on with the results, 25 ARDs we've educated. Actually, that number continues to grow. We continue to reach out, provide them information on the Business and Professions Code, Vehicle Code 22524.5, and Civil Code 3068. 10 ARDs have been referred to bar field operations for further investigation. Those are usually ones that we can't settle just by making a phone call. One ARD completely refused to talk to me personally and was referred to field operations, and we're continuing to follow up on that. At least 15 transactions resulted from adjuster or the insurer delaying to pick up the vehicle that was a total loss vehicle. Next slide. So in our observations, looking at all these, we're seeing ARDs are charging fees that are deemed unreasonable, and that's definitely a problem. We're seeing ARDs charging for storage before and during a teardown. And my direction to them is if you enter into a contract to tear a vehicle down, there should be no storage charged at that point. Insurance companies are delaying to retrieving the vehicle after being declared a total loss. That does happen. I know the pandemic slowed things down and people are shorthanded, but it does cause a problem. Delays in the insurance inspection leading to a total loss prior to any teardown. In some cases, the insurance companies aren't even doing an inspection. They're requesting that the shop do the inspection for them and send them the photographs. A delay in payment to remove the vehicle arises when the insurance companies incur excessive fees, which in turn causes the storage fees to continue to accrue, and that's a problem. And usually that's a situation where, you know, they try to get us involved as quick as possible so that doesn't continue. ARD has a vehicle that they may need to store inside, taking up space where they can't work on other vehicles, so that causes a loss of revenue for that facility. And I hear about that from the ARDs when I talk to them about these situations. And the last but not least, and this is the one thing that, you know, we really want to try to avoid, is funds being deducted from a consumer's claim for the excessive fees that are being charged. That harms a consumer, and we don't want that. So with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Chad. And let's see, questions from Bar Advisory Group members. Oh.
Hey, Patrick, Saren here.
Yes, Saren, go ahead. We'll start with the Webex attendees. Go ahead, Saren.
Well, sorry, I didn't want to, if I'm jumping out of turn here, I'm happy to wait.
Nope, go ahead.
Well, I'm trying to think where to start. Well, first, I think appropriate to start with a thank you to Bar. You know, I think as you noted that this started out as a legislative effort, and it was a little contentious, and I think our ability to step back and try to work with Bar, and frankly also with Jack Maldonado. I want to thank Jack because we've had some good conversations. And for you guys to undertake this effort, I think it's been really well received, certainly by our members. So thank you for that, and Chad and his team have done a terrific job. You know, the findings and results that you're coming across, I'm curious if if you want to talk about any next steps, or if you're planning to continue to gather this data and put together a report. It sounds like there could be some further action items. Frankly, there's probably looks like there's some information that we need to communicate back to insurers about the inspections and timely picking up the cars and things like that for the ARDs. And conversely, if there's anything else that needs to happen on the other end as well. So I don't know if you're in a position now to talk about maybe next steps or what you have planned, or if there's will be more data or report forthcoming, but that's sort of the gist of my inquiry.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about a formal report or anything like that. Obviously, that we're oftentimes motivated by legislative requirements to generate reports, and not to say that we couldn't do something like that. We were thinking this would be the forum to share the findings of this and continue to share and update our findings from the program or the project, if you will. I also think we're undergoing sunset review next year, and there'll be a report to the legislature. If you're talking about reports, that would be a much larger and comprehensive report, but something like this will be probably embedded in somewhere in the report as some of our new initiatives, and I'm thinking some of that could be covered in that more formal document, but wasn't planning on necessarily a report dedicated to this effort beyond what we're doing with the presentation and updating this presentation as we get more data along the way.
Okay, well, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you. And I know some may ask, why do we set this up as a referral program? Why don't you just lump this in with complaints? Complaints in our world or our vernacular are consumers who complain. We often, some try to bring in everybody's concerns, but really, truly, it's the concerns and the complaints that we respond to are from consumers. Didn't want to necessarily send a message that the insurers or the adjusters or anyone from the industry be standing in the shoes of the consumer on a repair complaint, but we didn't want to ignore those complaints. So we've set up this referral program. We also, similarly, it's akin to the estimate and authorization process. It's from a customer, and the customer, as it's spelled out in law, is the owner of that vehicle or the person getting the vehicle repaired, not necessarily someone or a representative from the insurance industry. So we were continuing with that theme, if you will. So, Jack, I know you had your hand up as well. Jack Maladonoff.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. And what I wanted to, is when I looked at this, I can understand some of the observations you found where the shops were charging unreasonable fees. The one thing that caught my eye, and I know this is recurring, and I think Saren alluded to it, was these delays in these inspections, which is, I know the current law under the Department of Insurance regulations, the Fair Claims Practices regulations, require the insurance companies to inspect the vehicle within 6 business days. It's pretty clear. And I would think, when I see delays, it's sort of counterintuitive, because you would think the insurance company would want to get that car out of there as quickly as possible and take it to Copart or a salvage pool as quickly, so they don't incur storage fees. So it's sort of counterintuitive. So trying to understand a little better in your observations, or maybe some additional data, or based on what you've seen here on these 30 or so cases. I know you mentioned 15 of them you saw the delays. Do you have any data or information in your investigation of how long have the delays been, or why hasn't it taken place within the required 6 business days as required by law? Has it taken place in 30 or 60 or 90 days? And maybe that's reason why these fees are so high. What have you been able to observe or see based on your investigations?
So we do have some data as far as that goes. Every situation is a little bit different. In a lot of cases, the insurance companies, the delay is because of the fees in the picking up of the vehicle, because they're disputing the fees. In Southern California, there's a lot of that where there's fees on there that they don't want to pay, and they're trying to negotiate with these repair facilities, ARDs, and so the vehicle sits there. And at the end of it, I try to negotiate, between these two entities as best as possible, what's fair and what's reasonable, and to educate the ARD at the same time as to what fees they should and should not be charging, when they should start charging storage and when they should not be charging storage. So as far as days go, yeah, we are acquiring that information, and as time goes on, I'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I'd be curious. And when you talk to, I know you talk to, you mediate these cases with the shops, you're obviously talking to the insurance companies. Do you discuss the 6-day requirement? Are they aware of it? What do you find in your observation?
It is discussed, and they are aware of it. A lot of them are aware of it. On occasion, they just don't feel that applies, and I have to do the best I can to try to explain to them. But there are cases where they just refuse and they want to charge the storage anyways. So, it is a topic of discussion, just to put it that way.
I would be interested, when you're collecting all this data, to get like an average of how long these cars are sitting there. Because in my personal view, I don't think the daily rate is the issue, in my opinion. It's the length of time, and what I've heard is some of these cars are sitting for 30 or 60 or 90 days. And that's why you see some of these fees, the storage fees are so, they're crazy. And I'm just trying to figure out, trying to identify the problem. I would have to think it's a combination of both the shop and the insurer. It's always somewhere, but the length of time, and again, I just want to reemphasize the 6 business days, and the intent there is to make sure these, when they're total loss, they're out of there. They're just not sitting around. Something needs to be done quickly rather than, these things dragging on. So any information on the length of time that you're observing in some of this, in these cases would be helpful too as we move forward. So I appreciate all the work you've done, and I do appreciate Sarah, who made some comments, because we have been trying to work together in a way where we can come up with potential solutions to address this issue, because they don't want to be paying storage fees. I know the auto body industry, they're in the business of repairing cars, not storing vehicles. That's not what they want to do. They want to repair the vehicle, and if the vehicle can't be repaired because it's total loss, they want it out of there because they need the stalls for cars they can repair. So I think it's something we can continue working among the stakeholders on this, and I think your investigations and your information is helpful as we move forward. So thank you.
Point of clarification on that, Jack. The 6-day rule, isn't that generally applied to doing a follow-up inspection or the initial evaluation, damage appraisal of the vehicle, and that once it's declared a total loss, is there actually a day requirement for them to pick up, for the insurer to pick up the vehicle and get it remove it from the facility? I think the 6-day is just on the repair side.
Yeah, my understanding is it's under 2695.8. I got E4BC, so I mean, I know it's being recorded here, but the insurer has within 6 business days after receiving the notice of claim to do the inspection. And then there's additional time for a re-inspection, and I think it's 3 days, or there's some provisions in there that were specifically built for this type of situation. So I don't have it in front of me, but it's something we can look at a little bit more carefully. But the vehicle should not be there for 30 or 60 days, waiting for an inspection, I guess. The car needs to be inspected pretty quickly.
Right, and I think that's important to raise that issue and make that point here is, so if we're talking about the vehicle has been torn down, disassembled to evaluate and prepare an accurate estimate for repair, and they're waiting for the insurance company to come out and confirm that and give their agreement to make payment. Authorization can only come from the consumer, not the insurance company. Yeah. Their agreement to cover those losses. That's a larger burden. Well, both circumstances are a burden on the ARD, but that's an even larger burden because in most cases that vehicle is disassembled in the repair facility, taking up repair space, and it's not practical to reassemble it or to move it and get it out of there. So certainly that situation is, and we will we have had, when we had our meeting with Saren's group back in May, we mentioned that, and they're very aware of it, and they're aware of the importance of getting that inspection so the repairs can proceed to get the vehicle completed and get it back on the road and back into the consumer's hands. After declared a total loss, again, I'm not sure there's a time frame on that, but it's now the vehicle's sitting outside. It's still taking up space. It's still a burden to the ARD. And that situation is self-compounding. It actually snowballs because the ARD issues an invoice for what's due through a specific date. The insurance company disagrees, and now the days they spend in disagreement adds more storage costs to it, which is it's counterproductive. Yeah. And that's, I think, I won't speak for Chad entirely, but a lot of these that we're seeing, it's that exact scenario. So if there's a way we can get the two parties to agree on a process to expedite getting these vehicles out of there and off to Copart or wherever they're going to go, I think that would accomplish a lot of these. And now, to speak to Saren's questions earlier, and Pat answered it, and I will say that there are also circumstances that what we're discussing here, and we've discussed with the insurers, are the circumstances where it's really just a disagreement between two parties trying to accomplish goal, and Chad's group has been very successful in accomplishing that. We are also seeing some other circumstances where there's towing and storage charges that have come about as a result of some unscrupulous acts by some of the bad actors that are unfortunately still exist out there. But I mean, they keep me very busy, so I'm happy with it. And those circumstances we won't be discussing here because investigations are ongoing. But once those investigations are complete and we take action, we'll probably be issuing a lot of newsletters and because what we're seeing on there, as always, that very small percentage that engages in bad acts is really egregious behavior, and we want to get it out there that we're aware of it, and we are using all the resources we have available to address that behavior. But again, I would estimate none of those are in this meeting today or watching on the webcast.
Yeah, so you understand, we're not condoning, obviously, the fraudulent activity. We're talking about the legitimate people trying to conduct business out there. And I know that there was an effort last year to work on some regulations in this area as well, providing the VAR has been working on this area. And I know we're trying to improve the industry. So I know we're all trying to work together to make sure it's fair and reasonable for everyone. But I just think that your investigations, your research here, providing us the data can help us with some reasonable solutions here. So as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from advisory group members? Dave Kusa. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Chad. I'm on the repair and service side, but we rarely charge storage fees because people fix their cars. But this took effect 21, or I mean, when did your job become?
I picked this up right around January this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah.
So pretty recently.
Yeah.
So the over 30. How many over 30 process referrals to date? A lot more, a few more.
There's a few more, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Yeah. So I mean, my point is, right, of the probably million cars that have been repaired since then, it's not. I mean, I'm not saying it's a problem, but it shouldn't be addressed. But it's fortunately not a huge problem, right? No, I mean,
I think that was a deferral to me.
Yeah, kicking the can over.
That data was as of May. Mm-hmm. That's the same data we presented to the insurance groups. Okay. And so we wanted to be consistent in what data were presented, and we've continued. So that was from January, essentially the first week of February through the first part of May. So in 3 months, roughly. Okay. Those 30, so an average of 10 a month, and it's actually obviously it started out slow while the insurers were becoming aware of this avenue for us to help resolve these disputes. And again, to Jack's point, I think both sides have a little bit of culpability in some of the practices, but both sides are also been very reasonable in resolving it and working it out.
And I imagine a lot of it is, just ignorance on the shop owner, on the shop side, right? Not knowing the process or understanding it, or the regulations. I mean,
exactly. Like you say, even in the collision industry, their practice is the same. They want to get the vehicle done and get down the road. Oh, and if it's a total loss, get it off the tow part, and let's move on to the next car. And I think that's where they're struggling with a lot of this as well. And although you're right, it's a very small percentage of automotive repair transactions. When consumers' total loss claims are adjusted down because of storage fees, it's a very big problem to them, and therefore it's a big problem
right,
to us.
because then the consumers get hurt, which we don't want. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So somewhere over 30, we've got 8 pending, and 16 were reduced or eliminated. So that's 24. So of the other 6 or more, is that like the insurance company? I mean, the shop was doing the right thing and everything was okay, or I mean, or does it always end up that the fees get reduced or eliminated?
No, the fees don't always get eliminated. Okay. And as far as what I can tell, it's about a 50% fee reduction of the ones that I address. Ones that I can't get addressed and have the fees adjusted that are reasonable, those a lot of times go to the field office for further investigation and hopefully get resolved there.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the presentation.
Yes, Johan Gallo.
Just a recommendation, as I was going through your presentation, it looks like the last time this was addressed in the BAR newsletter that goes out semi-annually, maybe it's a good time to republish that in the fall edition to give them the guidelines again on what's required on storage, because this is a constant issue. And, to Dave's point and others, repair shops are not storage lots, and they're cramped for space. I mean, I remember we have stores where we're actually paying for remote parking down the street because we don't have room to park vehicles. But I think a lot of times what I see in these types of situations is it's not a lack of, it's not intent, it's a lack of knowledge of what the requirements are. So I would just recommend you put it back in the newsletter, what the guidelines are, what the requirements for a shop are, to re-educate them so they can understand what's expected of them.
I want to thank you very much for that comment, Johan. I'm due to provide a response to our program support unit that does publication by tomorrow afternoon of what newsletter articles I propose. You just gave me one, so.
All right, thank you. Additional comments from advisory group members? Nikki Ayers.
Do you ever advise the insured that they're wrong and they need to pay the fees for like scans and things like that? And not the insured, but the insurance company?
The short answer to that is yes.
I mean, sometimes that's why there's a discrepancy, because they don't want to pay the bill.
I've run into that, yes. Okay. And it's addressed and explained.
Okay, I hope so.
We do have an example of that in the data. There was an adjuster, a claims specialist, I'm not sure what the title was, from back east, who was used to very inexpensive storage rates because they're not in, and felt that the $200 per day storage fees in the Long Beach area were not reasonable, and we advised them, no, that's absolutely consistent with that market and possibly even a little low, and they accepted that and moved on. As far as the scans and the other, that's an issue we talk about a lot here, and an ongoing issue, and we'll probably, and
still, it's time and money for equipment and uniforms, or, shop overhead.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's try some comments from members of the public. Anything? Bud Rice? Oh, you're raising your hand for Jerry. Okay, Jerry Froelich. Is the mic on?
Okay.
There you go.
So, and I work with quite a few body shops with my consulting, and with not having a handout, first off, and I've got a text to me from a client, wanted to make sure your referrals, you're taking referrals from the insurance companies, correct? What the problem that's going on, you've already mentioned it, you guys are very well aware of it, is with COVID, there's a lot of delays. Some insurance companies have gone to the point of not even having anybody out in the field. And what they do is put the onus on the body shop, and they end up having to spend more time going back and forth, getting on an agreed price, to the point customers screaming at the shop because they aren't getting their car repaired. They're waiting on the insurance company. So in general, what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of things that have since COVID that's happened that's caused delays. What my client is asking, and so am I, is can you not open that referrals up to the industry, the auto body side, auto body shops, because their concern is you're only taking what the insurance companies are doing, not what we're actually physically going through. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Something for us to look at. Yeah. Okay. Lady in the front row had her hand raised. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself.
Christina Sims, and I am not only here representing myself as a consumer, but I also own Smog check stations in Central Valley. But I was in a car accident 4 months ago, and I don't like the way that the laws are set up with the automotive industry. I don't. So if I feel like this, then consumers are feeling the same way. Okay? I'm here listening to the way that you guys are talking about the laws and the way that things work, and they're not working that way. They're not. Okay? I'm waiting for my dream car that I purchased, my Jeep Rubicon, and it's sitting there for 4 months, and I'm paying the bill. Not only that, but I also own 4 Smog stations, working on 5 or 6 in the Central Valley. And it's time for the laws to change. And I know you guys are so focused on the way that the consumer is taken care of, and I'm for you. I'm for you. We're partners in that. But our industry is not being protected. The honest Smog check stations and the honest people are not being protected by your laws, period. And I'm speaking not only as an owner, but as a consumer. You ask OPUS inspection, you call, Patrick, you call them, you mention my name, and you ask them, you tell them how they abuse people like me. I'm a woman in an industry like this, in a man's world. You ask them, they know. They know what's happening. They know what's wrong, and there's a flaw, a big flaw in this industry that needs to change.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Bud Rice?
Thank you. Yes, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up Shops. So I'll start off by saying I'm not an attorney, but it almost sounds like there's rules and regulations, but there's also contract law in play to some degree. And if somebody comes into a location and between the two bodies, one says, I would like to have this done, they say, sure, you can do that, but here's how much the costs are going to be, and you lay out what those fees are going to be and all those things are going to be. This side says, looks good to me, and they sign up. You shouldn't be going back to the shop now and saying, you make all your adjustments because these guys delayed on the other side. I don't like that. Okay, so to the extent that there's delays on the insurance company side, what does that have to do with the shop? I mean, the shop did the inspection, shop's protecting the vehicle while they're trying to make a decision, and the clock is running, just like what Jack was saying earlier. And I don't think it's fair to the shop. When you guys are talking about, well, we were able to get the shop to agree to a reduction, we were able to get this reduction, we were able to get that reduction, in most cases, the shop just wants to get the doggone car off the lot. So they'll say, okay, well, instead of this, give me that and get the car off the lot. Well, you go away thinking, well, okay, I got a reduction, hooray, but that's not a hooray. The process is not working correctly. Okay, so I like Jerry's comment about if you're only representing or getting feedback from the insurance company, it may be they're the problem. It may be they're the problem, but they're the only ones that you're hearing in this process. So I'd also encourage there to be both sides of the fence. And if, in fact, the problem is they don't want to make a decision on their end to pay the bill and to get the thing closed off, I just don't know how that's the shop's problem, because they did all the things that they were supposed to do. So in those cases, you ought to be on our side and representing us against somebody who's dragging their feet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bud. Let's see, any other comments we can try via Webex? Moderator, David?
Yes, Chief Dorey. We are now open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request for comment comes from Aaron D. I will read what was written and then give you an opportunity to speak. And Aaron says, I agree with the comment regarding the culpability on the part of the shops and the insurance carriers. Time needs to be reasonable for a shop to complete a teardown. Time needs to be reasonable for an insurance company to review documentation, validate ACV, and determine what is most cost effective. Often shop costs to remove a vehicle a salvage vendor exceeds the potential recovery of the car being auctioned. The cost to repair is still below the ACV, and hence there is an impasse. All right, Aaron, we're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Great forum. Representing an insurance company as a material damage manager, the storage fees are where we have the biggest area of opportunity as I see it. And a lot of the times, not only are the fees unreasonable, the tow bills are unreasonable, and those get compounded, and then the repair facilities come back and say, well, the car's been here for X, but we tore the car down today, we want storage as of today, make a decision today, and there are still processes on our end where verifying ACV, et cetera, to determine what is most cost effective under the policy or contract for the customer is one aspect. But the shops don't take into account, we inspected the vehicle and we requested a teardown, and then it took 3, 4, 5 days, a week or more for the shop to actually facilitate the teardown, to rule out additional damage or validate additional damage. So I think that those are areas of opportunity that the insurance side and the repair side can collaborate on. So what would a reasonable time frame be?
My direction to the repair facility is that when the vehicle shows up at their doorstep, they should be gaining authorization from the consumer as soon as possible to do a teardown. And once that teardown is complete, provide a copy not only to the consumer, but try to get it to the insurance company as soon as possible as well. But their obligation is to get it to the consumer. So a time frame, a reasonable time frame would be as quick as possible on the repair side. And I would also, in my dealings with the insurance industry, if it takes 2 weeks to come back and total a vehicle out, that seems like an awful long time to me. But you would have to, I guess, let me know if that's too long for you.
No, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And then I guess the other variable or another variable is, you know, there are times where there are liability investigations, there are coverage investigations that are also compounding the timeline. So I think that coupled with just the charges that the shops want to allege they are owed, that's an area of opportunity that creates difficulties. But I thank you for the information. This is very helpful.
Thank you. Okay, Nikki has a question. Nikki Ayers.
Yeah, I had an accident in my car in December, and the body shop sent in a detailed estimate, and the insurance company said that they were not going to put new parts on my car. They had to put used parts on, and that they were going to send the parts. And it took 20 days for them to come back and say they couldn't find the used parts. And so then we had to go through this process of trying to find new parts for a 15-year-old car, and that took a lot longer. So there are delays like that that I think that become a problem. And the shop that I went to is a very small shop, and they really can't afford to have that car sitting there. And I don't know what he did about storage fees, but you know, that's an issue too, where they want to send the parts, and you know, it takes forever to get what they want to send, and then the shop doesn't get any markup on those parts, and that takes away from their ability to make a living. So I think there's some of that in there too when they're charging storage. That's my thought.
Thank you. Additional comments from the public, David?
Yes, sir. Next, we have a request from A. McGee, Solano College. Bear with me just a moment. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Andrew McGee from Solano Community College, Automotive Department. We teach a lot. I've had the bar come out to the classroom as well. Kind of talk about the process. Listening to the last couple of commenters out there, just kind of a thought, maybe a sprinkle, nugget idea sort of thing. And a question for the bar panelists is, what is the bar doing to make it easy for consumers to understand the process? We don't deal with too many storage fees in the education business, but I know that local shops, obviously we talked about it to length in this conversation about storage fees and such. That could be something that the shop needs to communicate better with the customer in terms of timelines and such. But my question is, how is the bar making it easy for consumers? I know there's the website. The website can be a little bit cumbersome. There's a lot of shop owners and technicians who can't navigate the website well. So is that more of a bar issue, or is that more of a shop issue in terms of training their technicians and their shop owners to better navigate the website to help liaise with the customer for any customer issues that may arise?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two. Obviously, customers are at the shop, so the point of contact and the ability to educate is much easier for the shop. But we also have a responsibility and take it very seriously to be able to reach out to consumers on a grander scale, not just on a one-to-one relationship, although we do so when we get consumer complaints. We certainly do that. But proactively, we have social media. We don't just rely on the website alone. We have newsletters. We don't have a public awareness campaign that's paid for any a huge budget dedicated to anything like that, with paid advertising or anything like that. So it's always on a shoestring budget, and with the resources that we have available to us, forums that we're invited to, consumer forums and such. We do a lot of, outreach to, at least we did pre-pandemic, to Rotary clubs and such, and the industry as well. So we'll continue to do that, but obviously, part of our expectation and our hope is that the industry helps us as well, because they are on the front line, so to speak, with those consumers every day, with the consumers getting their cars repaired. Other comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Andrew, I point out, is an advisory group representative with the California Automotive Teachers.
Correct. Thank you very much.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? David?
Those are all the requests for comments we have at the moment.
All right, I'm going to try and move the agenda along. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for all the excellent comments. I think we'll be back doing something similar. We'll probably give it a couple of meetings, so maybe in January with additional data. And I think it's a good idea that we add some of the information, Chad and Bill, we'll talk about it, relating to the questions that Jack had on how long some of these time frames have been with the delays, as you put it. Okay, let's go to our next presenter, Clay Leake. He's got the next two presentations. The first being on enforcement licensing modernization. You give us an update on that. We've had a few presentations over the years on where we are with that, and we've actually got some significant developments that are worth sharing today. Thank you, Clay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for covering a good majority of my presentation earlier in the agenda.
Okay,
yeah.
Moving on.
Just real quick, I'll cover some background. We've probably all seen this slide a few times. Going way back in time, the BREEZE project was spun up with the goal of consolidating all of DCA's entities, licensing, and enforcement functions into a single system. The third release, which included BAR, was canceled in 2015. There are 18 DCA entities using BREEZE. The remaining entities have been directed to seek modernization through projects of their own, which we have been working on for the last several years. The first phase, which was completed, was some business readiness activities. A lot of business process documentation was put together, make sure we had a good understanding of our as-is. Phase 2 was the completion of mid-level solution requirements, development of use cases. Phase 3 was the project approval lifecycle, which is where we were spending the last year or two of our time. And finally, implementation, Phase 4, which I have some updates on. We have started the project and we are moving forward. Thank you. Our project was approved on April 25th of this year. The project was also delegated back. The Department of Technology ultimately has authority over these projects and the management of these projects. Their decision to delegate the project back to DCA BAR represents the fact that they have some confidence in our ability to deliver this project. We've had several large reportable projects over the last 10 years or so, and it reduces some of the overhead and gives us a little bit more flexibility to manage the project the way we see fit. So really pleased with that direction and the delegation back to DCA BAR. The contract supporting the implementation services was executed on April 28th. The contract was awarded to Encore Consulting LLC. We leveraged the DGS, Department of General Services software licensing program to expedite this procurement, and really pleased so far with the vendor and the work that's been going on. We conducted our kickoff meeting on May 4th, which included representatives from Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, the Department of Consumer Affairs, BAR, and obviously the project team. We are meeting very regularly, daily, to initiate development activities, get through some infrastructure readiness, meaning establishment of servers, deployment of code, all that fun stuff, and we're making some good progress so far. So in summary, one of the big goals of this project was to leverage a lot of the work that the department has done under the umbrella of business modernization. Cohort 1 was 4 boards and bureaus. I can't remember the 4 off the top of my head, but one is geologists. They successfully implemented a product called Inlumon and have modernized their licensing and enforcement functions. There were some opportunities to leverage that investment and also some of the environments that were purchased as part of that first contract under the Department of Consumer Affairs. So we jumped on that opportunity to leverage some of that work and share some of those costs. As I mentioned, we did obtain implementation services through the DGS software licensing program. And we are very focused on implementing what we call an MVP, or a minimally viable product, focused on licensing and externally facing capabilities. It is a 1-year duration with a follow-on 19 months of maintenance and operations to continue to enhance the product. And that's all I've got. I know Pat touched on some of the functionality that we are interested in implementing. We have been very focused. The project approval lifecycle is a very long process, and since as we were going through that process, obviously we had things like AB 471 and the asylee bill that Pat mentioned in the military. So we are doing our best to accommodate some of that stuff as kind of the foundation shifts, but I feel really good about the team. I'm really pleased with the progress we made. I think we are going to be able to deliver a very Amazon-like experience for our licensees. So as folks go to purchase, apply for an ARD, you can do that online, and you can pay for that online. And if you want to apply for 5 ARDs at the same time or renew 5 ARDs, you can put it in a shopping cart and pay for it all at once. So I'm really hopeful that this project kind of moves us forward into a more onto a more modern platform that supports a lot of the business needs. I know you folks have. We've spent the last 4 or 5 years talking to people in the industry, consumers, and totally recognize that there's a huge opportunity to provide some streamlined online services that we can all benefit from. Obviously, I think there's an opportunity to create efficiencies on our side as well in terms of processing applications. If we can do some front-end validation through a website, I don't have to reject an application and send you a letter that takes 2 weeks to get there. I don't have to pay for the stamp, right, all that sort of stuff. So we're going to continue to work hard on this project and hopefully have some good functionality for you guys to start using within the next year.
Thank you, Clay. Any comments from advisory group members? Mr. Gallo.
I just want to say thank you. I know how long and how hard you've been working on this, okay? And for us on the repair side with multiple locations, the entire application process sometimes when you acquire a group of stores and all the nightmare that you go through, and now to see this thing finally going online, the ability to pay it online, renew online, thumbs up, Clay. I appreciate all the work you put into this.
Well, thank you very much. It's not going to be perfect on day one, but we will certainly, just like we do with CalBar OIS, we want to improve it over time. We want to get the MVP live and then get feedback from everyone and continue to make improvements and make enhancements. So I don't want to set the bar too high, but I do appreciate that it's taken us a little bit longer to get here than I wanted, but we're getting there.
We'll take it.
Thank you.
Are you going to send out reminder notices to remind people they got to pay their ARD or their licenses?
Yes. So in a modern solution like an Amazon, like I keep kind of using that term, right? You could choose theoretically how you would like to be notified, if that's by text message or if that's by email or if that's an update to your portal that you would be able to log into to manage your ARD or your Smog shop or whatever it is, right? Whatever license type sits under BAR. So yes, absolutely. Great. And ideally give you some flexibility with how you receive that notification and potentially even things like the amount of lead time and things like that, right? So.
Other comments from advisory group members via the Webex? How about public comment from the public here in the room or via Webex? Mr. Bowie?
We are now accepting
Comments
public
on
comment
this agenda?
via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, we'll return to the agenda. Our next presenter is sitting right before us. Clay Leak again on the Bar OIS computer security update.
Thank you very much. This should be really quick. This has kind of just become an issue recently that we became aware of and something we wanted to touch base with the industry on. As many of you are aware, the OBD inspection system, or the Bar OIS, leverages Microsoft Windows operating systems. Over time, as many of you are aware, Windows operating systems go out of support. They become unsupported. Microsoft no longer provides security patches for those operating systems, updates, and those OSs become vulnerable over time. Currently, Microsoft Windows 7 and 8 are no longer supported and have not been supported for quite some time. Windows 8.1, 10, and 11 are currently supported. So from a best practices perspective, obviously, it's a best practice that you keep any machine that your business depends on in a managed state. Currently, about 1/3 of the OIS out in the field are running on unsupported operating systems. And from a security perspective and an availability perspective, I guess we see that as a risk for a lot of Smog stations. Well, I shouldn't say many. Some Bar OIS computers additionally are out there and have been set up to not accept Windows updates. So even if you're on a supported operating system, if that operating system isn't accepting updates, obviously you could put yourself in an unmanaged state and put yourself at risk. Next slide. So this is fairly new information for us. This was not data that we were collecting. We found some instances of Windows 7 out in the field and decided we would do a little bit of research. We configured the OIS client to start grabbing that data as you guys are logging in and performing inspections. So this is the data as of May. About 1,346 installations of Windows 7 out there in the field, 821 on 8.0. So obviously those two operating systems are no longer under support. About 3,000 on 8.1 and about 1,500 running across 10 and 11. So the risks, an unmanaged system, malware, ransomware, stolen data, lost data, right, downtime, which ultimately could lead to loss of revenue for a lot of Smog check stations, right? Obviously, if your analyzer is down, could impact your bottom line, not something we want to see. It also represents somewhat of a risk to the availability of your client. The client is a very hardened client, so the risk in terms of, some of that stuff on our side, malware, stolen data, loss of downtime is very, very low if it even exists at all. But certainly security is a huge priority for us in the state of California. SAM, Chapter 5300, outlines some very rigorous security requirements along with NIST 800-53 moderate, which is what the security requirements that we've built our VID to. And finally, some new guidance recently published as part of CalSecure. So in summary, we see, unmanaged computers out there as a real risk, and we are encouraging stations that have those unmanaged computers to get them into a managed state as soon as possible. We are strongly recommending that anybody running Bar OS get moved as quickly as possible to a supported operating system, and also one that is certified for use with Bar OS. As of the time that we wrote this deck, Windows 11 was not on that list, but now Windows 11 is certified for use with the Bar OS. So I would strongly suggest you move to Windows 10 or 11. 8.1 is under support through January of 23, but that's right around the corner. So that would not be my operating system of choice if I were going to go out and purchase a laptop. I've seen machines out there as low as $200-300 running Windows 10 that could be used to support the Bar OIS. Additionally, I mentioned making sure your Windows updates are turned on. Again, strongly recommend not only moving to a supported OS, but making sure your updates are turned on so you are receiving those security patches on a regular basis. For those that have computers on an unsupported OS, it's possible you could upgrade to a supported OS for free, or obviously go buy a new laptop with a supported operating system. And then for those leasing systems, many of you do not kind of manage your own OS, so that would be something you would need to reach out to your system provider, whoever you've leased that system from, and work with them on making sure you get a computer in a managed state. And I think that's all I've got. The reason this has kind of come to light as we're working on enhancing the client and making sure we are able to adhere to our security policies and directives, we are working on enhancements. Biometric was brought up earlier. Another big enhancement coming down the pipe is moving to a Chromium client. Right now, the client is based on an Internet Explorer shell. Probably not a lot of you have used Internet Explorer in the last 5 years or so. So obviously, we have an obligation to keep our site secure for the availability of the system for us and for Smog stations as well. We recognize the importance of those systems being available for use.
So we've been sending ET blasts out to the stations with unsupported software?
We have been sending out some targeted blasts, and there will be some more of that coming. We've also been working with the system lease providers to help kind of prioritize that work and make sure it's getting coordinated and done as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Comments, questions from the advisory group members? Yes, Dave Kusa.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Clay. So as far as the data security issues, is the consumer's data at risk, or is it strictly internal in the shop?
Yeah, it would really be shop's data. We don't collect any PII. Well, BAR doesn't collect any PII. I don't know what data stations are collecting. If you're collecting social security numbers or phone numbers or names or anything like that, potentially. Okay. But yeah, anytime you're anytime you're using an unmanaged system to support a mission-critical business process, I would see that as a risk.
Okay, but as far as, I mean, because most of the time the smog inspection equipment is going to be isolated, I would hope, from the shop system, but maybe not. Okay. Yeah. And then with the leased systems, does BAR have any leverage over those providers to, like, force them to update these things? I mean, you know, it's one thing if I own the equipment, but if they own the equipment, it seems like, and they're the approved provider.
So, right, ultimately, you're the customer. If you're leasing a system from Opus, you're the customer. Certainly, we work closely with those companies to help prioritize their resources and make sure we're working as closely as possible to achieve the goals and objectives under the Smog Check program. So I certainly can't compel them to, but as a customer, I think you have a lot of leverage, and certainly we're willing to do what we can to help facilitate those conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Additional comments from advisory group members, either here or virtually on the Webex? Public comment. Bud Rice. You're in the room. You dropped a pen or I think. Bud. Okay.
Hi, Bud Rice, Quality Tune-Up Shops. Clay? Hey, Clay. I didn't hear you say that the Windows 7 through Windows 8.0 will cease to function and stop working. I didn't hear you say that.
Nope. We're doing everything we can until those numbers come way down to continue to support those operating systems. The challenge is it becomes really difficult to test our software against some of those older versions because you can't even get those operating systems.
Right.
I'm not even permitted to run that operating system on a state machine because it's not secure. So we're doing everything we can to keep those up and running as long as we possibly can, but I'm limited in my ability to test against some of those older operating systems just because they're so out of date.
Yeah, but just, you know, the shop mindset is I run it until it stops. I mean, that's some mindset that are out there, right?
That's right. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. That's exactly why I'm here. I get it. But I think the other point I'm really trying to drive home is that the shop should be interested in moving that machine into a managed state for their own reasons. And I'm not I'm not turning off Windows 7 or Windows 8, but I can't promise the availability for much longer.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. Moderator David Bowie, can we get comments, open it up for public comment via the Webex?
Absolutely. We are now open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Clay.
Thank you very much. Great to see everyone.
Yeah. Our next presentation is on recent regulations that were adopted and took effect on July 1, just 21 days ago. STAR program changes. Matthew Gibson. Yep. Is the mic on?
Now it is.
Okay.
The green light. All right. Thanks, Pat. I'm Matthew Gibson. I'm a program manager in the BAR's executive in BAR's executive office, but I'm also the chief designee who hears informal STAR appeals. I'm going to stay on the first slide for a second. I'll be presenting about changes made to the STAR program as a result of the new STAR program update regulations, and my PowerPoint presentation today is 10 slides. Okay, now I'll get the next slide. So just a quick summary on the STAR program. It was developed in response to Assembly Bill 2289 back in 2010. It's a voluntary certification program for smog check stations established in BAR regulations. It requires inspection-based performance standards for STAR certified stations. And STAR certification authorizes smog check stations to inspect and certify directed and gross polluting vehicles, and test and repair stations to provide repair assistance services under the Consumer Assistance Program. I will also add that the STAR program replaced BAR's Gold Shield program. Next slide. So the STAR program updates. Regulations were adopted on May 5th and became effective on July 1st. The updated regulations delete outdated Gold Shield program divisions, and all of those Gold Shield provisions or regulations were still on the books. They were inoperative as of December 31st of 2012. The regulations also modified existing equipment and eligibility standards and established a STAR certification suspension rather than invalidation process. So next slide. So in looking at an overview of the new STAR regulations, California Code of Regulations 3392.1 lists the required services of a STAR station and equipment required to perform those services. 3392.2 lists the eligibility and performance standards for STAR certifications, which includes short-term measures, and short-term measures are measures of test deviations and other performance metrics on a monthly and quarterly basis. There's the follow-up pass rate, or FPR, which is a long-term performance measure that looks at individual technicians and stations on a semi-annual basis, and also the citation and disciplinary history. California Code of Regulations 3392.3 lists the causes for STAR certification suspension. Next slide. So the new 3392.1 makes the following modifications to the equipment requirements. Equipment requiring calibration shall pass calibration at least once every 10 days. Stations located in basic or change of ownership areas that certify directed vehicles only when purchased by a licensed DMV dealer are no longer required to have a BAR 97 emissions inspection system, or EIS. And stations will be restricted from communicating with the VID when they are incapable of performing uniform and consistent inspections for failure to maintain required equipment. To the next slide. The new 3392.2 makes the following modifications when calculating station performance and program eligibility. The minimum similar vehicle failure rate for certification has been lowered from 75% to 50%, which is actually a loosening of this requirement. The short-term measure now includes the performing of inspections using the incorrect platform as a test deviation, So if you performed a Bar 97 EIS test on a vehicle that required an onboard diagnostic inspection system test or an OIS test, that would be a problem, or vice versa, that would also be a problem. Only a station with an FPR score of at least 0.40 can add a no-score inspector, and a station with a no score can only add an inspector with an FPR score of at least 0.40. And that modification corrects a no-score shop from adding a no-score inspector, or we also refer to it as the no-score scenario. The next slide. The new 3392.3 creates a suspension process to replace the invalidation process. So the causes for suspension are the same as for invalidation. So those are the failure of the short-term measures and the FPR, citation that's become effective, or a suspension or probationary order as a result of a disciplinary action, or failure to maintain the required equipment. Modifications made to equipment and eligibility performance standards, such as failure to calibrate equipment and that requires calibration, and modifications made to the short-term measures, such as inspections using the incorrect platform, and FPRs, such as a no-score scenario, are included in the causes of suspension. And failing to allow access or preventing BAR from inspecting a STAR station is a new cause of suspension. Get the next slide. So 3392.3b requires BAR to notify the station of the grounds for and term of suspension. With a suspension notice, the station will be provided a STAR certification reinstatement request form, which can be completed and submitted to BAR licensing when the cause of suspension is corrected. The station will also be provided information about the STAR report card on BAR's website. When the term of suspension ends, the station may resume operation as a STAR station without having to reapply, as was the case when we last made changes to the invalidation process. There's just a couple things I want to say about this. The STAR report card that is on BAR's website is the same report card that's used to issue suspensions. It's the same one I used during the informal hearing process. So it's incumbent upon stations to look at the report card and monitor their own performance measures. Next slide. The new 3392.4 establishes the informal review process for STAR suspensions. The time frames and processes remain the same. So 5 days after receiving a suspension, the station would can request an informal hearing. The chief or the designee has 10 days to conduct the hearing after the request. The station will be notified 10 days after the hearing of the decision, and the station has 30 days to appeal to an administrative hearing to dispute the decision. And the chief or the designee can rescind the suspension, affirm the suspension, or reduce the suspension, reduce the period of suspension. And that is the conclusion of the presentation.
Thank you, Matt, for the update. And the STAR scores ending with the quarter that just concluded, June 30th, are out and have been published on the BAR website with the STAR report cards. So we're moving forward with the new regulations, obviously, as a result of those scores. Suspension, as opposed to invalidation, kicking someone out of the program, suspension letters will be forthcoming for those whose scores are no longer meeting the standards. But I think we're thinking this will be a lot easier process with the suspension process than we previously had with the invalidation. Anyway, thank you for the presentation. Any comments from our advisory group members? Anyone on the Webex? We'll open it up for public comment. Moderator, can you do so also with the Webex?
Absolutely. We are open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Our last presentation, but not our last agenda item, is Mark Carlock's presentation on our annual reports that we produce, the 2022 Smog Check Performance Report. I believe there's also included in there some of the US EPA required reports, or not reports, report that we just saw was transmitted, and we participate in, but it was transmitted by the California Air Resources Board. Mark Carlock is relatively new, not necessarily to emissions issues and policies. He's had a long and distinguished career at the California Air Resources Board, had worked at the California Community College Foundation. I'm sure I'm leaving out a number of other places that he's been, but we are fortunate to have picked him up as an air quality engineer in BAR's engineering and research branch, and happy to have him on our team. Although he's always been on our team, we've worked really well with Mark over the years, wherever he's been. So welcome, Mark. He is joining us via the Webex.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words, and good morning, everyone. Go to the next slide, please. I'll be giving you an overview of the update to the Smog Check Performance Report, the SCPR, which is required by statute that we produce an update each year for submission to the US EPA, which gives an overview of historical trends with the Smog Check program and an analysis that includes comparing roadside failure rates with overall programmatic failure rates. This year's report also includes an independent review of the previous year's SCPR, which was done by the University of California, Riverside, CSERT, and St. Model Solutions. And the current and historic Smog Check Performance reports can be viewed or downloaded at the link that you see in the presentation there. Also required by statute to be produced each year is a report to the US EPA on different parameters of the Smog Check program, which include the failure rates, number of retests, vehicles are not certified after initial failure, et cetera. Both of these documents are produced by BAR, transmitted to CARB for submission to the US EPA. Next slide, please. Just a note, historically, the analysis that is included in the SCPR separates the fleet into two broad groups. One is pre-2000 model year vehicles that are tested for emissions, either on TSI, two-speed idle, or the acceleration simulation mode test. And those vehicles that are 2000 model year and newer, which are tested, their OBD systems are queried. Because every year that goes by, you're getting a smaller and smaller fraction of the fleet, which is not OBD equipped. And because of the pandemic, limiting the number of roadside tests that can be performed in 2020 and 2021, the analysis included in this year's SCPR focuses mainly upon OBD equipped vehicles, or OIS tested vehicles. Also, in this current version of the SCPR, the potential benefits of Smog Check were estimated using both CARB's emissions estimation model, MFAC, along with data that's collected in Smog Check and at the roadside. Next slide, please. Just a couple of the findings. Comparing this year's SCPR to the previous year, for calendar year 2021 roadside, we found a failure rate of about 16% when you weight that for model year distribution in California. And that can be directly compared to a 17% roadside failure rate in the 2019-2020 sample. Vehicles that are certified by high-performing Smog Check stations were found to fail at a much lower, a lower failure rate at roadside compared to vehicles that are certified by lower or Smog Check stations that have a lower FPR score. And we find that Incremental improvements in the smog check program were evidenced through declining differences in the roadside and smog check failure rates, and an increase in the enforcement actions that we've taken against stations and technicians that were found to be engaging in fraudulent practices. Next slide, please. As far as estimating what additional benefits might be achieved if all smog check tests were performed by high-performance stations, BAR collaborated with CARB to come up with an estimate of an additional 53 tons per day of reactive organic gases and oxides of nitrogen. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates the information from the 2021 data set for both smog check, those are initial tests, and then OIS roadside. So the upper red line is the roadside failure rates, and that can be compared to the black line, which is the smog check failure rates. And the concern here is where the lines diverge, not at the newer end, but at the older end, where we're finding that roadside failure rates are higher than initial smog check failure rates, which implies several things, not the least of which is improper certification at some smog check stations. Next slide, please. In comparing roadside failure rates as a function of station performance, we found that those vehicles that were certified by high-performing stations, as indicated by their FPR, failed at a lower rate on roadside compared to those with lower FPRs. Next slide, please. As far as enforcement activities from 2016 to 2021, BAR has filed about 1,182 data-only cases. That means just based upon data rather than in-person inspections or using undercover cars, resulting in over 1,000 license revocations and 275 suspensions or probations of licenses. During 2021, we've had over 2,000 vehicles that we blocked their certificates because of potential fraud. These vehicles were sent to the referee network, and as of June of 2022, June of this year, less than half of those have received a smog check certificate. BAR continues to take administrative action against stations that are suspected of either clean piping, clean gassing, clean plugging, or clean tanking. And we're also working with DMV to curtail registration-based fraud, where motorists certify that their vehicle is housed in a change of ownership only area in order to avoid going through the smog check process. Next slide, please. We also found evidence that vehicles that are certified by stations that are in good standing have a lower roadside failure rate compared to vehicles that were certified by stations that were subsequently suspended or had their licenses revoked, meaning that not only are we stepping up our prosecutions, but it seems that we're having an impact on the bad actors. Final slide. In addition to the smog check performance report, as I said, there is an annual requirement to turn in a report to the EPA, which is a compilation of kind of the back office statistics on how the smog check program is performing. Again, this report is submitted by CARB. In fact, I understand that they sent it out yesterday. And every other year, the report also includes a summary of changes to the program design, procedures, and regulations. That's the end of my presentation. I'd be glad to field any questions.
Thank you very much, Mark. I will now open it up for any comments or questions, comments from the BAR Advisory Group members, both in person here as well as via the Webex. Seeing none, we'll open it up for public comment. Any comment from the public here in person or moderator via the Webex?
We are accepting public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, we would. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Mark, for the presentation. Did you say the Smog Check Performance Report is posted on the BAR website, or is it soon to be?
No, it is posted, and CARB has sent both the SCPR and the US EPA report off to the EPA.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Bye now. All right, we'll move on to through the agenda here. The next two items are not presentations. They're just handouts, quarterly handouts that we do on our statistics or data from the licensing and enforcement programs. And I will group them together in terms of any questions or comments from advisory group members who've had a chance to review the data. I don't think there's anything new or different about those that warrants a presentation from us, then that's why we continue to make it a handout. But I'll open it up for any comments, questions, our advisory group. How about members of the public? Again, moderator, could we open it up for public comment on this agenda item, or these two agenda items, enforcement statistics and licensing statistics?
Absolutely. We are taking public comment on these two agenda items. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Agenda item number 11 is for public comment on items not on the agenda. Any advisory group members wish to bring a matter that wasn't part of the agenda? Mr. Gallo.
We're going to take a trip down memory lane. 50 years the BAR has been here. It should have told me something on grad night when I was told the next day I was going to have to stay in my suit and go to a meeting in LA that was very important to discuss this new agency called the Bureau of Automotive Repair and how we were going to have to do tickets. Should have been an indication to me I might be working with this group for a while. So, 72, I was just a snot-nosed kid out of school learning all this stuff about automotive repair because I kind of like working on cars. Fast forward in 84, I got promoted from staff to deal with the Bureau of Automotive Repair. I've been working with the Bureau for 38 years. And then about 1992, we decided we need a better relationship with the Bureau of Automotive Repair. I often refer to it as Russia versus the United States. It's a Cold War state. We didn't get along very well. We had a lot of issues between ourselves. And I thought eventually they appointed me to this new organization called Automotive Repair Coalition, which is now referred to as CalABC. So CalABC forms, and everybody, there's a whole buzz about what's this group going to do and what are they about. We decided to have a summit in 1996. We were just 4 years old and just trying to find our wings and figure it out. So we held the summit in 1996 and brought the industry together, and everybody thought Gallo's crazy. Nelson Lucas PR firm is crazy. You can't get all these people in the industry to come together. We did. We had Sears, Pep Boys, Midas, everybody, all the key players, including associations, ASCCA, anybody that did anything in automotive repair was there. We eventually sent a letter to Governor Wilson saying we need to form a board. Anybody that knows anything about Governor Wilson, he didn't like boards. He thought it was a bunch of people sitting around a table doing nothing and getting nothing done. So after working with Polanco and a lot of other people in the legislature, it was finally determined, you know what, I think Wilson will sign off on an executive order. So we created, with the help of Governor Wilson, Secretary Sheehan, Fred Aguirre, you name it, we created this format to create an advisory. And in 1998, Governor Wilson signed Executive Order 188-98 that created why we're here today. I got to commend Chief Pat Dure. I've worked with, and Jerry knows because we talk about it often, all the way back to Marty Dwyer, Juarez, you name it, I've worked with the chiefs. But the key thing is what did we get accomplished? So to make it short, because there's no way I can cover all this for everything we've done, I've cut it down to the bare minimum. We worked on disciplinary guidelines with 4 chiefs over 12 years, and Chief Pat Dure got it finally across the finish line. 12 years, 4 chiefs. We got it done. 8 years, we talked about the electronic invoicing. And my gosh, people are, fax machine? What the heck's a fax machine? Send me an email. Took us 8 years to get it done. Chief Dure got it across the finish line. All of a sudden, there's this new kid in town called mobile ARDs, and you're a mechanic. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute, they're not licensed. So, you know, working with a few folks over at ASCCA, we all started talking about that, and we're going, well, they should be under the same rules and regulations we are. That's the fastest thing we've ever done, and it was done in about less than four years. We talked about all the regulations they were trying to come out with oil changes. And the bottom line was you can't mandate an oil change, you can't. So we moved off of that. Eventually, we're at Assembly Bill 471. Bill 471 is a key change for our industry. We're talking about cite and fine. There's a lot of concern about cite and fine. We know what happened when BAR issued NOVs and law firms that were out there using this to harvest ways to sue businesses. It was right there. The bottom line in all of this is we finally got together with an agency and decided that the only way that we can win in this game is if all the stakeholders win. And Chief Dure and I have talked a lot about that because everybody goes, well, what does that mean? I said, well, the way we designed the Bureau of Automotive Repair is somebody had to lose. The BAR had to win, the consumer had to win, but the business had to lose. I thought it could be done differently. If we do the things right and everybody wins, then we've done our job. So with that, hats off to you, because I think all 3 are winning. Thank you.
Thank you, John, Johan. Appreciate those remarks. It's really a walk down memory lane, yeah, and it brings back a lot of memories. You also just verified that I'm getting older. Yes. I feel it every day. Yeah, I know. It does. Thank you so much, though, for those remarks. Additional comments for public comment on items not on the agenda? Yes, Bud Rice.
Thank you, Bud Rice, Quality Tune-Up. I had a conversation with Pat earlier today. He was asking about Charlie Peters, and many of you know he would call me up and we're going to have a bag meeting and say, you going to the bag meeting? Well, see, he already knew the answer. Okay, he already knew the answer. Yes, I'm going to the bag meeting. Okay, what do you want? Can I tag along? Okay. So I can't tell you how many years it was me picking him up the morning of the bag meeting, 2+ hour drive, bag meeting, 2+ hours back, with us arguing the whole way back and forth, okay? But it was friendly. It was friendly. But sometimes we got along, and sometimes we didn't get along as we argued about stuff. And many times he would be sitting here in a chair like this, and he'd be arguing with everybody else. But you couldn't argue with what he wanted. Okay, and he always wanted a fair shake for what was going on. So how he might get there would be a little odd sometimes, but you couldn't deny that he wanted to have something done correctly. Okay, so he's in hospice care now. I think it's a short timeline he's got left. So I just wanted to say that to the group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bud. Charlie, if you're listening, my thoughts and prayers with you, and wishing you well. Any other public comments? We'll open it up for the Webex opportunity to comment.
We are taking public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, we do. Thank you. All right. I think this is our last agenda item, is to more of an announcement than anything else, is that our last final meeting for the calendar year 2022 will be Thursday, October 20th, 2022. It'll be, I think we are going to, it seemed to me to go fairly smoothly, a hybrid meeting. We'll definitely plan on, unless there's something new that develops or transpires between now and then with respect to the pandemic and any changes to our meeting conditions. We'll plan to do so both in meeting here in person in this same exact room, at least that's where it stands as of today, and then a Webex opportunity for those who can't physically or make it to the meeting. So I thought it went well today. Any questions or comments about that? Any agenda items? You don't need to think about them today. We can shoot me an email over the next few weeks or so as we start moving on from this meeting and planning for the next one. But it is an opportunity for all the advisory group members to weigh in on the development of that agenda. Any other last comments before we adjourn? All right. Thank you so much to all of our advisory group members for being here. Thank you to all the presenters for the wonderful presentations. Did a great job. Some responses, obviously, to the questions that come up and the ability to answer them here without having to go back to the office and research something. That's always helpful. Thank you to the public and their comments and participation in this meeting, both here in person and via Webex. Also want to thank our support staff, Mike Sanchez with the webcast. That'll be this meeting recorded up on our website probably as early as next week, probably the later part of next week. David Bowie, who supported the WebEx virtual participation for this meeting. Thank you as well. Zach stepped out. He knew I was going to say something, but Zach Richardson, yeah, he did. Zach Richardson, our wonderful support staff for the executive office and all of these meetings throughout the year. Thank you all again. Look forward to seeing you in October, and we are adjourned. It is now 12:09 p.m. We do have I forgot to say, and remind everyone, we do have a workshop that will begin at 1 p.m. promptly with a presentation from Matthew Gibson, and that'll be facilitated or chaired by Bill Thomas. So we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much.